Broadcasting to you on WNN 1470 AM and TrentoVision.tv from the world's leading think tank laboratory, buried deep in an undisclosed building in hostile territory where evil and corruption is exposed. You're about to enter the Tom Trento Show.
Trento heads United West, a group that says it defends Western civilization against the onslaught of Islam.
And there is no more definitive. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 19th of December today, 2013, there's no more definitive illustration of Western civilization than that lonely little country sitting over there off the coast of the Mediterranean, by the sea, well, including the Sea of Galilee, next to, Mark, do you know the boundaries around the country of which we speak?
Are you talking about Cyprus?
Yeah, Cyprus. We're talking about Cyprus, ladies and gentlemen. No, that other little country that is so loved by everyone in the world, particularly that tall, weird building on 36th Avenue in Manhattan.
Gaza.
The Gaza?
Yeah,
the Gaza. I think that's the name of that country.
The Gaza area.
There's no more definitive illustration of the essence of Western civilization than the country of Israel. All right, and today, live from Israel, we have our very dear friend. We'll bring him on in a moment. Not yet. Barry Shaw, many of you know him from his writings. He's published a book. We'll get into that a little bit. We had him on last week in a fallback Skyped position from his smartphone. You know, even talking about these things where you can have a phone, Dick Tracy kind of stuff. Right. You can have a phone in your hand.
Well, they actually have the wrist. Do you see
they got that? I know. But now we can do this. Last week he Skyped in on his phone, but today he's got his computer working because the snow is gone. All the snow is gone, I think, in Israel. We'll get to that in a second. But hello, everybody. 1925, 6 days, 6 shopping days until Christmas. And if you shopped at Target, you know the warning going around the United States of America. Target got hacked, and virtually everybody's debit or credit card has been exposed to the hackers. So as a public service announcement, really look carefully at your purchases, because the information that was stolen through hacking Target allows the bad guys to duplicate your card with your code also and do online purchases all over the place. So start double checking your purchases. Little public service announcement from TrentoVision. Today, hi, I'm Tom Trento. We're bringing you another power-packed hour of national security, local national security, jihad activity in the Florida and the United States. But today's International Security Day. Regrettably, Paul Weston with Liberty GB, who was with us last week, had a family situation he had to attend to, so he will not be with us. We'll have just Barry today.
And I think our other guest was picked up by some kind of special forces or regarded to the NSA.
Well, our other guest, what are we going to, M got sick. And
is that what it was?
Well. Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I think there's a little concern, too, about being visible on this sort of thing. But our guest today doesn't care about that. Before we get to our guest today, also at the end, we're going to tell you what's going on in the state capitol. You guys are not going to believe what's going on in the state capitol. Remember there was a ruling that allowed for religious symbols?
Oh, Festivus?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, everybody and their brother are bringing, there is the, I'm not kidding, folks. We're going to look at it in a little bit. The spaghetti moon god symbol is now in the foyer of the capital of the state of Florida. It's a chair with a plate of spaghetti on it. We're going to bring you the picture with moon buggy eyes on it. And the people who worship the spaghetti moon god have placed it there.
Is it Islam? Is it Islam?
No, it's not Islamic. It's
No, that would definitely not be Islamic. That We do not worship such silly things.
But the Satanists were denied a place.
Oh, the Satanists were
The
denied.
Satanists were denied, but they're going to
So Islam was denied
They're
then.
they're gonna win. The Satanists will win on that one. All right, so that's a little later in the show.
All right.
Also, beside
Give 'em a
national,
sneak peek, just a sneak peek.
beside, yeah, you,
Hello.
throw the.
You want to do the
Just a quick,
spaghetti
quick,
guy?
bang, bang. Just a real quick.
There's the spaghetti blade. All right, that's the spaghetti god at the state capitol. Unbelievable. Yes, you will see Western civilization unravel before your very eyes. We like to thank our good friends,
God.
Tea Party community, the boys over there, the Tim Boys, Bonnie, Bare Naked Islam. Dr. Rich Swire now has a new site, drrichswire.com. These are critical sites if you want to know all things Obama, all things jihad, all things U.S. Constitution, all things saving Western civilization. BizPackReview.net. Great site, good friends of ours. 320 days left, folks. 320 days and flying by us until November 4, 2014, the midterm elections. And Hillary's all over the news in the States nowadays. But though they may be the midterm elections, which most people go, they're not that big of a deal. For the state of Florida, they're critically important. Gentlemen, tell me why.
Because you have the House.
For the state of, I'll repeat it. I think our crew,
You have
got in a
Democrats.
little.
You have Democrats in a couple of very important
Strike
districts.
two. I think our crew got in a little late last night.
What?
Why is the election on 2014, November 4th, for the state of Florida, very, very important?
It's not important at all.
Strike three. you guys are getting curfewed, okay?
We don't care.
They were
We don't
entertaining
care.
a guest last night.
We don't care.
We're
You're
voting.
not supposed to go out with blues guys, I guess.
You're curfewed. We're voting for a governor for the state of
Oh,
Florida.
that's
Remember that
stupid
little part?
thing. Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
little
yes.
stupid, yeah.
Well, you're saying the midterm, so I thought you were referencing.
I said for the state of Florida. I said everything. But anyway,
But you were calling it the midterms.
okay, 3 strikes. You're in by 10 o'clock from now on. Okay.
No problem.
Lucy,
No problem.
watch your human, Lucy, please. All right, let's get right over to Israel. I think.
One second here.
I think the Mark and I and a group of United West folks were in Israel in February 2011, and we met our next guest, met him there at an event, and have been following his amazing work ever since. And he's been a guest on several occasions. And then we were in Israel just a month or so ago. We were not able to hook up with our guest personally. But we are going back in November 9. The election is November 4, 320 days. So 9 would be 5 days. 325 days from today, Mark, we're back in Israel. Damon, you want to come with us this time?
Yes.
Okay. You can come.
I would love to go as well. I have never been.
Uh-oh. Schmucky, you never been
Schmucky
there?
wants to go
I've
too,
never
huh?
been. It's one thing I must do before I,
Well, what about Imam Abdullah? You ever been to the promised land for Jews?
I have been to Al-Quds, my friend. Yes.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Well,
and
let's-
it will not be long. As long as this administration and John Kerry, if what happens, what he's trying to do, it really will be Al-Quds yet again.
Well, that's what we're going to ask our special guest, who's not in Al-Quds right now, which is the evil name called by Muslims for Jerusalem. Folks. But he's a little bit north of there, in a very cool town, and I'm assuming you're in your town right now. Barry Shaw, are you with us?
Yes.
Yeah, I am, Tom. Thanks for having me.
I don't see, there you are. Howdy.
Good. How are you?
Well, I'm good because you walk outside and it's a chilly 75 degrees. What is going on with the weather right now in Israel?
Well, in some of the places on the higher ground, they're still shoveling snow. But I want to tell you, this afternoon I was having a meeting. You know how we conduct our business meetings in Israel, Tom, at an outside cafe, short sleeves, sunshine, and everything. That's us in Netanya by the sea. By the way, you're right. I enjoyed meeting you, and I'm very sorry we didn't get together when you were recently in Israel. I really wanted to. But you obviously had a busy schedule.
Yeah, Frank Gaffney and I were leading the group, so it was very difficult to move things around, change things. And there was an evening in Jerusalem where we were actually having a few people. I think Carolyn Glick was supposed to come and some others, but that's when the Rebbe died, and Jerusalem was shut down with
A sea
800.
of black.
Yep, 800,000 people. So that was an experience to say the least. Now we heard.
I heard you coming next year, right? We have to get together then.
Yes, we actually have the trip all planned. We're leaving on the 9th, a 2-week trip, November 9, just a couple of days after the election. We have to be here for that. Now, was this storm?
I heard the bookie wanted to come to Israel.
Who's
before
that?
he meets virgins.
What's that?
I heard bookie said that he wanted to come to Israel, right?
Yes, I would love to come.
Right, you said before you didn't finish it. I suppose you.
Schmuck, yes, Schmuck. I have never been to the homeland, and before I kick the bucket, I'm old. Perry, I'm 92 years old, and I would love to do nothing more than go see Israel.
Kick the bucket is a British expression. Your expression is go meet your virgins, right?
Not me.
No,
This is Schmucky Putznik.
Schmucky Putznik.
I'm a Jew.
Schmucky Putznik is a 92-year-old Jewish fellow who lives in Kings Point, where you only vote Democratic. That's a place in Florida. But Imam Abdullah, say hello again.
Hello, this is Imam Abdullah. Asabach Alehem Bere. I wish you the fleas of 1,000 camel to sleep in your bed, and hate you very much.
I want you to come with Tom next year. I'll introduce you to some very attractive camels.
Barry, when we were there in October, Mark and I, we finished the main tour, then went down to Eilat for a little R&R, which was great. While in Eilat, we went on a day trip to Petra, and boy, oh boy, did we smell and see and have enough experiences for a lifetime with camels. Have you ever made it over to Petra?
No, I really want to. I believe it's an amazing place.
It was pretty amazing, but I could not wait to get out of the Islamic country of Jordan. I'm not comfortable in Muslim country or some Muslim countries nowadays.
Well, if you do go to Petra, Barry, you got to take the donkey ride back up the hill. It's like 1.5 miles, uphill thing. So
get that up.
You're talking to an ex-marathon runner here. So,
okay, if we can find a little piece of video, we'll show you a little bit. You'll hear it and you'll see it on the replay. But before we get into all the national security and the negotiation stuff, I mean, there was a lot of discussion here. We live in South Florida, a very large Jewish community. We've been to several events over the past week or so, and there was a lot of talk about this storm and how it was of biblical proportions. Give us a feel for really what it was.
Right.
Massive. I live on the. My position here. It's dark. I can't move the camera, but if I was to take the camera that way during the day, you can see right outside my balcony here the Mediterranean Sea. We had the most amazing, threatening, heavy clouds coming over. And then we had a thunderstorm, lightning storm of biblical proportions, one of which hit our building. That's why we were out of power for a short time, but also out of computers with emails. That's why I couldn't get through to you. But the rest of the time, we had downpours of rainfall. We had enough rainfall in the week to last a lot of places for almost like a year. You can tell how heavy it was, Tom. The rabbis were telling the other rabbis and the synagogues to stop praying for rain.
Really?
And then on the high ground, we have some of the heaviest snowfall we've ever had. Hopefully, this is going to be a good sign because we need the rain. We probably filled up the Sea of Galilee and the rivers and the channels, and we should be all right for water for quite some time.
Yeah, for
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
That's like the storm of the century, right? Or more than a century, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And when
they reckon about.
and when you say that
rainfall in such a short time, more than like 200 years.
Well,
And the only way I could get through to you guys last week was with my smartphone over here.
Right.
So like Tom mentioned, you know, this little thing you hold in your hand, you can communicate all over the world. It's amazing. And it's done through Israeli technology. It's that little chip and that sort of technology inside it that keeps you in communication all over the world.
That is one thing I must say for the BDS movement, the boycott, divest, and sanction movement, which I endorse wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly. Tell us, Barry, what the world would be like if everyone were to obey the BDS, the boycott, divest, and sanction. Give us a couple of the products that are made in Israel that we would not be able to enjoy quite as much.
Right, okay, look, I'm holding up here, I'm glad you mentioned that. This is my book, Israel Reclaiming the Narrative. And if you open it in chapter 1, I don't know if you can see the title. This was an article I wrote in 2006, which is the first chapter in the book. It's called, If You're Going to Boycott Israel, Do It Properly. In other words, this is a message from me in Israel to all these BDS boycotters. If you're really committed to your cause, throw away your mobile phone, because none of them work without Israeli technology.
Absolutely. Give us a list of some of the things, Barry, that we consider instrumental in our society today, that people that really are into this BDS. I'd like you to expand upon the point of, if you really don't want to use Israeli products, give us an example of some of the products that we use on a near everyday basis that if people really want to obey the BDS, that they'd have to chuck in the garbage.
Exactly. Thanks for the opportunity. These people are BDS cowards who tell everybody else to boycott Israel and Israeli products. They don't do it themselves. Like I said, if they're really true to the cause, let them throw away their mobile phones. Let them throw away the computers, because without the communication systems in the computers, ADL and things like this, and Intel, the Microsoft chip, no computer anywhere in the world would work. So, you know, these BDS cowards, then, if they're true to their cause and their own principles, would not be able to communicate to all the ill-advised other people about boycotting Israeli products.
And also,
then they would start, health would start being affected. But then they ought to check their medicines and their pills, you know, because a lot of those come out from Israeli technology and Israeli pharmaceutical industries. So the medicines would be in doubt. That would force them to go to hospital. But then they have to be careful of what sort of procedures they're having in hospitals. Because if they're having that cam that they put down your throat and to diagnose what's happening with you, that's an Israeli product as well. So, you know, from there, you could die. I'm telling you, the BDS supporters, if true to your cause, throw away everything that you have that has Israeli technology inside. It may affect your health. You may find that when you go to the hospital, you can't have the proper procedure because it's Israeli technology and Israeli science that's in there. And you may die for your cause. But at least be true to your cause and don't be such a hypocrite and a liar.
Hey, Barry, this is Tom again. There's an Israeli rapper, or I guess he's an American rapper, Ari Lesser, is that his name? Ari Lesser, have you yeah, he has a great rap video out. Where he says, "Hey, if you want to boycott and divest and have sanctions, let's take a look at." And he goes through about 50 countries that are true cesspool of countries. They discriminate against everything if you're not part of the totalitarian regime, from North Korea to Yemen to all these other countries. But the problem is this, Barry. You know it as well as we do, that this whole nonsensical BDS, and folks. BDS movement is just another Jew hate effort to hurt Israel. Boycott, divestment, and sanctions. So you need to boycott Israel, divest your investments from Israel, and put sanctions on Israel because they're occupying whatever the thing, whatever nonsensical.
They're calling us Nazis. It's the most insane thing I've ever heard. The rest of the world is calling the Israelis Nazis. What the hell is going on, Barry? Tell me.
Schmucky.
I'm getting upset. I'm getting upset today.
Schmucky had his Red Bull this morning.
Boy, I tell you, Schmucky's like, is he going all Republican on us now?
I don't know.
It's taken all year, but it might have finally worked.
But here's the problem, Barry.
I want to tell you, Tom, I appreciate that and I appreciate you guys raising this point, but I take this quite seriously. And I want to tell you, this takes up about 3/4 of my time when it comes to advocacy work for Israel. No, everywhere in the world, I'm finding that you were hinting on before, the absolute hypocrisy, double standards and discrimination that goes on against Israel, that they apply the standards against Israel that they do not apply against any other nation on earth, and they do not apply it against their own hypocrisy. I'm busy right now with a lot of European countries who are imposing the most hideous discrimination against, as you mentioned, sanctions and boycotts against Israel that they do not apply. For example, we've got this thing with the European Union. Have you heard about it? That they want to impose sanctions and boycotts against Israeli activities over the imaginary, fictitious 1967 line, okay? Because they talk about occupation. These same countries in Europe, this same European Union do not apply that principle to Turkey, for instance, which has been occupying Cyprus, and it still gets a free pass. They don't apply it against China, who's occupying Tibet. They don't apply it to Morocco, who is occupying Western Sahara. And by the way, the European Union are funding Morocco in projects in Western Sahara. They're funding and helping and cooperating with Turkey while they're occupying Cyprus.
Yep.
Yeah, they get away with it when they're hitting on Israel.
Yeah,
it is discriminatory, it is double standards.
And folks,
the final thing I want to say, you ought to apply, Natan Sharansky came out with the 3 Ds. Discrimination, demonization, and double standards. And when you see these 3 Ds applied against Israel and Israel only, then you know it's hypocrisy and lies. And it's anti-Semitism.
And Barry, what we're finding in our work, the United West, and hi folks, 23 minutes after 3 o'clock on the 19th of December, only 6 days left till Christmas. Get all your Christmas shopping done. Make sure you get your men, get your wives or significant others something, and ladies, same thing. We told you so here at TrentoVision, 6 more days. But on this beautiful 19th, what we have found, Barry, in our counterterrorism and our pro-Israel Zionist work, we found 2 levels of this mindset, Jew hatred as expressed in a sophisticated global boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. Complete nonsense. Here's what we found at the street level, at the academy, on the colleges. And we've been to many colleges at Israel Apartheid Week where they're pushing this narrative. And your book obviously exposes this. We found that you have knucklehead liberal students, 18 years old, 22 years old, usually led by somebody 30 years old. You can see on our screen right now, large group of U.S. scholars endorse academic boycott of Israel.
This is this week. This is this week.
Yeah, we found that
American Studies Association,
which is probably a nonsensical little group led by one hippie who hates Jews.
No, this is a big group, man.
Yeah, but here's what happens. You get a group like
3,800 members.
Yeah, well, I would look into that. But what they do is they try to establish some credibility as an organization, and then they get the bobble-headed liberal kids all to buy into this narrative. And then when you go actually speak to these kids that are in their 3rd year of graduate degrees, some of them, they've done their undergraduate work. They're working on, postgraduate work. And then you ask a couple of questions, what this means and why they're doing it. And they have about 30 seconds of logical discussion with you before they turn to, you're a Zionist hater. You're anti-Muslim. I mean, there's no logical rational interaction. Now, here's the second level of this movement. So you got a lot of people on the street in the academy making a lot of noise for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, BDS. But more importantly, you got K Street in Washington. K Street is all the lobby firms are on K Street in D.C. They all are funded by Saudis, many of them. This is worldwide, actually. The Saudis are running the lobbyists worldwide to push this in Western countries, and then you got this whole movement coming down from the top.
Not to mention, you have J Street as well.
J Street's
we
right
have
in
the
there.
liberal Jews in the Northeast who believe whatever the administration says and whatever Soros says, and we go along with it. So you have a portion of the liberal Jewish community that is very pliant to the wants of this Saudi lobby and the Jew-hating administration.
But here's what's happened, Barry, and here's what we want you to answer. In the past 6 months, the Saudi relationship, which has always been tense with Israel, is sort of changing. And we're seeing a realignment, a geopolitical realignment, in terms of the necessity of Israel and Saudi Arabia to come together to deal with Iran. So we know the Saudis are funding a lot of this anti-Jewish stuff, but now the Saudis need Israel. Help us understand what's going on with Saudi Arabia and Israel, please.
Well, if you'll allow me, I want to go back to a thing you said, because you made some very relevant points about the academic boycotts, which we've been fighting against, some successfully, some not in Europe and Britain, but now it's arrived on your shores over there. And again, with another plug to the book, because you seem to be picking out parts of the book. People should go to www.israelnarrative.com. I have a chapter in this book, and in that chapter, I have a chapter which is called The Closing of the Academic Mind. This was written by Howard Jacobson, the Booker Prize-winning author. And he wrote this, and I'm just giving you a little quote from the book, and this is Howard Jacobson, not me. Academia should encourage the interchange of ideas and engage in the search for conflict resolution. It ought to be a place, I add this, about people with more intellectual and superior minds. And once they're taking, as you say, money from the Saudis or other people, in order to close down thought, it should not be, according to what academia, it says, should be an open forum, not a closed society. Howard Jacobson says here, and I quote, it should not be an incubator for propaganda, incitement, extremism, and hatred. And he goes on, when academia closes its ears, it is no longer academia. It's the closing of the academic mind. So any academic institute in the States or anywhere else that suddenly decides boycotts, it becomes dogma, not higher education or higher thought. Whoever is funding it. And one would assume that in the universities, on the campuses, these should be the people that have open mind, broader minds, rather than closed minds and dogma.
Not in the United States anymore. Many of us believe the academy is lost, and in no small part to the inability of the Jewish students and the Christian students on campus to engage the cultural battles in a successful way. And here's what we found, Barry, on this, and then I want you to get back to Saudi Arabia too. We have found, and the United West has been on many, many campuses, as I've said, either with programs showing movies Obsession and Third Jihad and Iranium, or our counterterrorism work against the Muslim Student Association. But we have found that the typical Jewish student in college, typical Christian student in college, and when I say Christian and Jewish, I'm talking about serious students that have a belief in the Bible, that they are trained by their families to be productive individuals, and that getting a liberal education is essential to functioning successfully in life. And then they're trained to move beyond that and to become a professional, whether it's a professional in business, a professional in medicine, a professional in theater, wherever it is, to be a professional. They're not there as activists or ideologues. They're there to get an education and then go into the business world, succeed, raise a family, enjoy life, worship God. That's a typical Jew and Christian. Conversely, on the left, the Democrat left, now joined with the Muslim jihadi, cultural jihadis, they're ideologues trying to change America on the campus. And we have seen in this conflict, we'll have a student who wants us to show the movie Obsession, and he'll schedule it, and we're working with him by phone, and then a week before the scheduled showing, he calls us up and says, too many people are giving me bad looks. There's Muslim men on campus. They're 35 years old. They're Saudi agents is what they are, posing as students.
How about when the...
Hang on. And the kid, I got to tell you, I've had 50 occasions like this through the years where these kids melted in front of you, frightened. So we would go and try to get Hillel or some of these groups to shore them up. And then they go, oh, we're not here to confront people on campus. So the campuses, Western civilization, the Judeo-Christian worldview has been lost on the campus by default to the Marxist Islamic worldview. It's bad. And many Jews and Christians now are sending their kids to private colleges, and now we're really abandoning the academy. Yeah, Damon has a...
Real quick, I was going to say, what's really sad is that oftentimes it's the campus, quote, Jewish groups that are aiding in shutting you down and other people. And that's the saddest part of it. Not only is it outside pressure, but the Jewish groups themselves are banning and sanctioning
shutting us
people
down. Yes,
like
exactly.
you.
I
So
know.
that's
I know, it's crazy.
really the problem. And that's where some of the stuff really has to change is as Jews are responsible themselves for educating in what's going on and not keeping
And
the truth.
Damon, by the way, who's speaking, is a Jewish guy who's been to college, has a degree, fights these battles on the campus, so he's aware of all of this stuff.
I think, if I can jump in here, I think part of the failure among American Jewry is that what has happened over there with the liberalism or whatever you call it, they have lost their identity. Once you cut the ropes of your identity, your roots, your heritage, you're floating free. And as you're floating free, you lose or haven't learnt the essential values of your own faith or your own people, and you start adopting other people's values.
Good point.
And then you try and build your Judaism around these other sort of principles. Now, there was recently a Pew poll, I don't know if you heard about it, Damon might have heard about it, right? Where the future of Judaism in America is extremely dire right now. Extremely dire.
Yeah, we went over
And what
it.
this Pew
We
poll
did it.
found-
We went over it on the show.
Sorry, you've been that way. Okay, but I can
It
tell
is
you-
depressing, and I'm a Christian. I'm an evangelical Christian. It's depressing to see evangelical Christianity is on the downslope also, but there's so many of us, 100 million in this country, that we got a little more time. You got a handful of Jewish people, and this next generation coming up is doing exactly what you just said, Barry, cutting those roots to their Judaism, their faith, their history.
Let
Oy
me make
vey.
let me make a profound statement.
Go ahead.
I think,
Go ahead.
I think a lot of Israelis feel that J Street is a traitorous organization, not only to Israel, but to the Jewish people.
Amen.
Right? We look on Israel. This is a dispute even within Israel. There's a thing that Bibi says to the Mahmoud Abbas, you have to recognize Israel as the Jewish state. Actually, there's also a thought over here that Mahmoud Abbas and anybody should recognize Israel as the national home of the Jewish people. That's what it is. And Israel is becoming increasingly an anchor for people, for Jews who want to maintain an identity. And we keep saying this, you mentioned it before, Tom, what we might call the Judeo-Christian values. And we find ourselves increasingly a shining light, a tiny island in a sea of hatred, murder, and mayhem.
Yep.
And yet, the people like J Street and a lot of these American Jews, like you said, are going out and supporting boycotts and so going out on demonstrations that are anti-Israel. What are they, committing their own suicide? They're certainly not going to commit ours, because the boycott campaign based on that level, is a minor irritant to Israel that can be fought. The danger of boycott is, and we see this in Europe, is they reach from these crazy, extremist, radical organizations, but when you repeat a lie often enough, as Joe Goebbels said, it becomes to be treated as truth. And these things in Europe are now being adopted by European governments and by the European Union, and they are being imposed on Israel.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs, Barry. Here's what we need to do right now, because it's 37 minutes after the hour. 37 minutes if you're watching in Israel right now, our show, it's 37 minutes after 10 o'clock at night. You're just getting up and going out to dinner, if I remember correctly, in Tel Aviv. And if you're in California, it's 37 minutes after noon. So
they're just waking up.
They're just waking up in California. But Barry, we have Barry Shaw, a writer in Israel. Barry, you have a. It sounds like a British accent there. What are your roots? Where are you from?
I originated from Manchester, England.
And you made your way to Israel how many years ago?
Well, my story is that I came to Israel for the first time when I was competing in what's called the Maccabean Games. That's like the Jewish Olympics. Wow. That's where you buy your medal. Yeah, but then I went back, and it just happened that when I went back, we had the Yom Kippur War. And I remember being in synagogue where people were coming in and saying Israel had been attacked. We couldn't wait till they get to the end of service and rush home and turn on the BBC. That was the only channel we had on TV, on a black and white TV at those days. And I was horrified by listening to the talking heads in the BBC studio. Israel had been attacked. We thought it was being wiped out. And the only thing the BBC could talk about is how this war in the Middle East would affect the price of petrol, the price of gas, at the in the pumps in the thing.
Boy,
and we
things
wanted
have
to get
changed.
information what was happening with this tiny state. The attitude of the BBC would be better for the world if Israel was wiped out. So it would reduce the price of
Let him go.
petrol.
Let me hear this.
And that made me question, where does my heart and where does my head lead me? When the British government was representing me as a Brit, and I have to see Israel wiped off the map, and it made me aware of what was happening. There are a few other things that happened as well that later on, Israel turned it around. The Entebbe incident, you remember, where the plane was hijacked and the Israeli soldiers went and said to the hostages there,
Bibi's brother.
Jewish, we've come from Israel, we're going to take you home. It was a nation of heroes. And we decided, my wife and I and my kids, this is where we belong.
And how long have you been there?
About 37 years now.
Wow. God bless you. You went very quickly over the Maccabean Games. Did you say you were participating in that?
Yeah.
What? Tell us about this. We got a Jewish Olympian here. What is the deal?
I was doing the 5,000 and 10,000 meters because they didn't have a marathon or half marathon that time in Israel. But when I made Aliyah and went to live in Israel, I was competing in sport as well. I organized the first marathon in Israel, which was called the Sea of Galilee Marathon.
Wow.
Which is now the Tiberias Marathon, which is the lowest marathon in the world because it's below sea level.
Pretty cool.
Well,
are you still running these days?
Yeah. Not so much racing so much, but just running to keep fit.
All right, Mark has a question for you. Then I want to
Mark,
move into
got a
John
question.
Kerry and the negotiations. Go ahead, Mark.
No, he don't need no stinking donkey. That's for sure.
No, you could run up from it's about a mile down when you go to the city of Petra. It's a mile downhill, a gradual slope to get to the end. Then you got to get the hell back up, and you're exhausted. It's hot, it's dusty, it's dirty, but you can put on your running shoes and you can zip right out of there. That's for sure.
I did the New York Marathon 2 or 3 times and London as well, but my best marathon time was 2 hours, 32 minutes and 36 seconds.
Wow.
2 hours and 32 minutes.
In a
I
marathon?
don't forget the 36 seconds.
Wow.
That's impressive. That's how long it takes me to put the shoes
a half
on.
marathon?
Marathon.
Wow.
Like I said, that's how long it took me to put my shoes on.
Yeah,
I was
man.
gonna say Mark could do that a half marathon on a bicycle in 2 hours.
In Miami traffic, that's how long it takes to drive, 26
right,
miles.
right.
Hey, Barry, we hear that our wonderful and uncompromised and unequaled Secretary of State, John Kerry, who looks these days like an animated corpse. I mean, it's really sad whatever he's doing to himself. But what's more sad is what he's doing to other people, in particular what he's doing to Israel with his, I don't know where this guy is coming from. Give us the Israeli perspective of John Kerry and how that's impacting you folks who live there.
You want me to talk about John Kerry or what I call the Obamacare with regard to Israel security?
Yeah, put that together. You wrote a very interesting article on the Obamacare connection with Kerry and all of this. Fill us in on that.
I mean, I want to tell you, maybe I'll start at the end. Okay, you mentioned John Kerry. I don't know whether the news has got out there in America, but John Kerry, as of this morning, I read about it, and I want to tell you, I nearly choked on my cornflakes. I learned this morning, listen to this, hold on to your seat,
Okay.
that John Kerry is proposing, as part of the negotiation, the peace deal with the Palestinians, that the Vatican, and wait for it, Islamic countries be the guardians of the holy places in Jerusalem. Now, Tom, I don't want to upset my Catholic friends, but really, I don't see the Vatican Swiss guards looking after my safety and security in Jerusalem against Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists. And quite frankly, it's not in the interest of the Vatican to patrol the alleyways and the heart of Jerusalem with Turkish, Saudi, and Jordanian troops against devious Palestinian troublemakers, as is proposed by John Kerry.
Real quick, I read an article earlier in the week, Barry, that said that Kerry is going to come over next month, that he was there actually during the snowstorm, and read an article, I believe it was from Caroline Glick, talking about how to expect Kerry to jam down an agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians, giving the Jordan Valley to an autonomous group for 5 to 15 years before it reverts to full Palestinian control, which would basically mean the absolute end of Israeli security.
Well, okay, let me mention two things about the Jordan Valley there. Again, I don't know what John Kerry is smoking.
I was going to say the same thing. The guy's smoking something.
But I want to tell you, you mentioned about the Jordan Valley. You guys know about it, but one of John Kerry's proposals, and we've had General Allen over here trying to push it, is this when it comes to the Jordan Valley. The proposal is in the Jordan Valley that U.S. Marines will keep the peace between Israel and the Palestinians in the Jordan Valley. In other words, to protect Israel and Palestinian territories on the eastern border. Mahmoud Abbas said, no Israeli troops in Palestine, all right? This is an absolute non-starter, Tom. Israel, I want to tell you, and this is important, and I think probably Bibi told it to Kerry, Israel is unwilling to have American soldiers do Israel's dirty work. Neither do we want to put American boys in the position of facing Palestinian terrorists, suicide bombers, or rocket fire. The Obama proposal is way out of line. It would also endanger America's strategic interest in the world if American soldiers are seen defending Israel against Palestinian aggression. And what would these Marines do to prevent Israel's defense forces going after Palestinian terrorists and rocket launchers when Israel is attacked? Are they going to stand in Israel's way? So the message here is, okay, send us the equipment, let us buy the equipment, give us the equipment, and let us do the job. We are the ones that will do the defending and the dying for Israel, not you guys.
Yeah, this is very, very big, folks. We're with Barry Shaw, Reclaiming the Narrative, his book. How could, Barry, if people want to get in touch with you, get a copy of your book, how can they do that?
Well, various ways. You could write to me at www.israelnarrative.com, or you can go to Amazon where you could download the ebook form, or even get the paperback from there.
All right, so there it is, Israel Reclaiming the Narrative, Barry Shaw. Folks, at 46 minutes after 3 o'clock on the East Coast on the 19th of December, this beautiful Thursday, we have Barry Shaw, an analyst, a national security analytical writer, a cultural zeitgeist. I mean, he's got all kinds of things going on, Barry. Knows what's happening.
But my hats.
And a shy guy. He doesn't like to share his opinion
No,
too
he's
much.
very reserved. He's very
Absolutely
reserved.
not. But the book is the most fantastic book and the best one on the subject at an amazing price.
And he's a salesman too,
He's a
folks.
salesman, too.
But here's the point that Barry's making right now, Mr. Barry Shaw, that he's making. The John Kerry, I'm still stuck, Barry, on who the hell, I mean, what kind of meeting did somebody say, let's get the Vatican to protect, the holy sites of Israel, because they have something to do with that somehow, some way. There's some historical connection. And then let's have, the Hamas on the other side. This is not only a disaster, actual disaster, a disaster of immense proportion that would occur, and both would eventually target the Jewish people. It's inevitable. But even more importantly, in terms of the fighting for Israel, and we understand you want to fight on your own and get the equipment, but I got to tell you this: the United West, our organization, we travel in some interesting circles, some military intelligence and law enforcement circles, and there are people currently serving in those institutions, and people who are out, many people who are members of the special operators community. They have told us that if push comes to shove, and Israel needs our skills, former SEALs, current SEALs, we're over there. We're going over there because they know how to fight a war. They know what's going on. They know who the enemy is. The rules aren't as bizarre as U.S. rules are. So, if they need us, we're going to help them. And there are good people in America that would be willing to come there, like in 1948 and in the various wars where, Americans made airplanes and brought them over. So, and I know you don't need that now, and I know you have weaponry that's very interesting that's there. And I said this on yesterday's show, and I want your comments on this. If you take a look at Israel's history in the Bible over the last 4,000 years, whenever Israel depended in and of itself on its kings or its prophets or its military prowess, inevitably they were overthrown. It wasn't until there was a rediscovery, a recommitment to God, to Hashem, that God said, okay, now you got it right. Put your trust in me, not in your great hardware. What do you see that as an application for Israel today and its war fighting capability?
Yeah. Let me put it this way. The history of the Jewish people has been one is when we have reduced our strength, we have been overpowered and conquered and destroyed. This is why the strength of Israel is so essential. We have to be superior in our strength, both militarily, intellectually, all our prowess in initiative, entrepreneurship than any other country, certainly in the region. We have to reach out and make allies and keep allies. The biggest concern for Israel right now is since Obama has been in the White House, there is a huge question mark over our head about whether America has our back and our full support. Obama said it does, but there are a lot of things going on right now, both with regard to the Palestinians we spoke about, and certainly about Iran, which leaves us in grave doubt about Obama's intention. Now, you mentioned the Bible, right? If you read King David or the Psalms, repeatedly it implores the Jewish people to maintain its strength. I want to remind you that the Star of David, the Magen David, you know what I'm talking about, that national emblem of the Jewish people, right?
Yep.
Magen David is not the Star of David. That is a misinterpretation, Tom. Magen means shield. So when you hear somebody talk about Magen David, they're not talking about the Star of Israel. They're talking about the Star of David. They're talking about the shield of David. In other words, even in that emblem, it maintains strength.
Very interesting, very interesting. Hey, Barry, we're going to have to let you go, but take about 30 seconds. And we really appreciate you taking the time to brief our viewers, our listeners here on TrentoVision, the United West. Take about 30 seconds and share your thoughts with our audience. We have a radio audience and an internet TV audience regarding our relationship with Israel and the needs you have right now and how we could help.
I want to, thanks, Tom. I do want to reach out to all the people who are listening or viewing us right now. It is essential, absolutely essential, that each of you not only pray for Israel, but act for Israel, even in a small way. If you see anything in the newspaper or TV which slanders and applies double standards, whether it's the media, whether it's on the campus, whether it's the politicians, I implore you, challenge them. If you need information in order to make your case, please contact me. You can get me, as I said, at israelnarrative.com or on Facebook, and I will give you the answers, the information, the facts you need. We need everyone, each individual, to play his part, however small that might be.
All right, Barry Shaw, well said. Thank you, sir, very, very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you for coming. It was wonderful.
And I invite you and your Islamic friend to come to Israel next year, and we'll drink l'chaim together.
You got it. We'll be there. Take care. Let's give Barry a round of applause. All right, Barry. Thank you very, very much. We'll see you. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Weekend's coming up. So Barry Shaw, I did not know that he was
Well, we actually have
An athlete.
top tier runner, marathon runner.
Something.
You know, if you break 4 hours in a marathon, you're pretty good. He's at the 2:30 mark.
2:30.
That's crazy.
and
That is crazy. Good stuff, Barry.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he
yeah.
is
and the Maccabean Games thing.
not
too.
a young sprout. He's a tall guy. So good man.
Here we have him in the Maccabean Games too.
Him?
No, that's just
the
the
35 games, though, right
it's
there.
35 games though. So that's
1935.
yeah,
Did they have the games in 1935?
yeah.
Where? In Britain?
Well, it's a Jewish thing. It's not necessarily an Israeli thing. In fact, the Maccabee games, I believe they kind of travel around.
Oh, interesting. I don't know,
It's like the Olympics. They're not
we
always
should do a
necessarily
show on
the
that in
Yeah, yeah.
7 years from now or something. All right, well, here's what we're doing. It's 54
Hey,
minutes.
Go ahead and
54
donate
minutes.
if you want.
54 minutes after the hour, 3 o'clock. Before we close with our look at the spaghetti moon god on
Yeah, we gotta bring
display
that back
being
up.
worshipped at the Capitol, guys, any thoughts on Barry's admonition and his analysis and his passion?
Guy's awesome. I mean, I could probably sit there and talk to that guy for 10 hours
Right.
and not get your fill. I mean, he loves Israel. He's obviously not from there. He's a strong Jew. And the guy has it right. I mean, the guy understands the goodness that Israel is and the importance. And I could... one thing we haven't gone over a ton on this show, I know we've mentioned it, but the BDS and the absurdity of it. You know, that's the one thing that
It's
that
so
leaves me at, is just the absurdity of the
It's so
BDS
absurd
movement.
that it doesn't really even register in my head that well that it's legitimate and real. But we know it is. It's so foolish on its face and at every level. But we need to do it. Go to the BizPack review, Jack Fernari's
Got it.
site. And I'm going to read the headline. Why don't you throw the headline up? Let's read it. Here's what we got going on at Christmas time in Florida. It's great to live in Florida, isn't
really
it? I
is.
mean, we
I
got
mean,
terrorists, we got elections
whatever,
with Chads,
yeah,
we got
spaghetti
crazy
noodles.
people.
Big picture. Tom can read the article, but you put up
Show the big
graphic of
picture,
big
yeah,
picture. That's-
Okay.
Tom can read it while we put up that.
Put that big picture
I will.
up there.
Go ahead.
Anti-God. This is the headline for the article we're reading. As a little bit of background, folks, as we're bringing our show to a close here on Thursday, a little bit of background. A decision just came down from a local court allowing the nativity scene, which is the crib scene, the manger and all of that of Jesus, which is, I think, what Christmas is all about, to be on display on public property, on state property at the State House. They determined the foyer was a legitimate place for that. And then with that, because we are not allowed to recognize the historic influence or input of Christianity in the state of Florida, everybody who wants to put some sort of Christmas display can also do that. So last week we showed you the Festivus, Jerry Seinfeld's television show's phony, funny Christmas holiday called Festivus, and they put up a Festivus tree made out of beer cans. That's on display next to the nativity scene at the state capitol in our goofy state of Florida. Well, take a look at this right now. We now have the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. The Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. There it is on the screen. She must be the what?
The head wizard or
the head
something?
wizard, the head chef of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And here's what it says. It says that after allowing a nativity scene to be placed in the Capitol Rotunda, Department of Management Services was hard-pressed to refuse any ludicrous displays from atheists like beer can Festivus pole, and the most absurd of all placed in the Capitol Rotunda Tuesday, 2 days ago, by the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, if you show it there, is essentially a desk chair, one of them orange chairs with four. What are you doing? Just show the chair. The
you
picture.
just want the chair. I was
Yeah.
reading the article.
Leave that there. I'm reading. The chair with four legs with the wheels on, the orange hard plastic chair. That's the seat of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And then what happens next is a whole bunch of sloppy spaghetti, about 50 pounds of spaghetti is thrown on the seat, right? And it's got two eyes made out of what?
Cheese, I guess.
No, they're meatballs.
Meatballs, okay.
Two eyes, an eye blob of noodles grasping two meatballs with a sign that reads, "A closed mouth catches no noodly appendages." A closed mouth catches no noodly appendages. Proverbs, not proverbs, but proverbs, herbs, H-E-R-B-S, Proverbs 3:27. Now, this is pretty interesting to say the least. Are you kidding me? And
Well, I got a question.
but look what they blew out. Show the picture that they blew out. They actually did not allow this next photo. It's right below that one.
Oh, okay, hold
Happy holidays from the Satanic Temple.
on. Oh, how come they can't put that up?
Well, that's the whole argument right now. It was said that they have an angel falling from heaven into flames of hell, right? That's the Church of Satan's display for Christmas, an angel falling into the flames
We
of
got to
hell.
blow that one up.
But the state said, no, that's too obscene.
Happy holidays
now they're gonna-
from the Satanic Temple, huh?
So,
okay.
So anyway,
I'll bring that one up
you
here,
know, I don't really have a problem with all of this because if you put the nativity scene there, no one would even have noticed it. It wouldn't have been spoken about. When these whack jobs put this crazy stuff there, it draws attention to them. And then you compare it to the beautiful story of Jesus Christ coming as a savior for mankind, giving his life to all. And you compare it to spaghetti, which I happen to like, but I don't worship.
You love spaghetti.
And compared to Satan,
Well,
who I happen to hate. So if you got your choice between Jesus, Satan, or spaghetti,
Well, you can't.
You be the judge.
You can't eat Satan, so I've got to go with
He
the
can eat
spaghetti.
you, though. He can eat you.
Well,
That's the problem.
that's the reason I'm going with the spaghetti moon god. I think
going
that's-
with that one?
I'm going with that one.
Abdullah, Satan, Jesus, or spaghetti? Where are you
Spaghetti
going?
moon god.
I will go to Jesus. Jesus is one of
He's one of you guys. Okay, on that crazy note, we'll say goodbye. We'll see you tomorrow. Jumpin' Juma Freaky Friday.